Hi, I'm Mick. I'm going to show you how I make Suncatchers out of Roscolux and epoxy resin. So Roscolux is basically thin pieces of colored plastic that's normally used as filters for lights, and I thought it would be kind of cool to use it in resin projects. So the way the process works is I make a thin disc of resin, I paint the design on that with ink, anything that's going to be black, and then I cut out pieces of the Roscolux for color, and then finally I encase everything in more resin. So I'm starting out with this pencil sketch. I'm going to scan that in so I can work out the color scheme on the computer. I warm up the resin in the sink with hot water. That's hopefully going to keep the bubbles down. Now for this pour I'm going to use 4 tablespoons each of the parts A and B, the resin and the hardener, and that's going to be enough to cover the bottom of the 7-inch diameter mold. I mix it for 3 minutes, pour it into the mold, and then I spread it with this wooden stick. Now I'm zapping the bubbles with a heat gun. I like to use a flashlight for that because that makes them show up better. I'll use a toothpick to get rid of some of the bigger ones. And I'm using this bowl as a dust cover while it cures. So the resin's been curing for 24 hours. Let's see what we got. And it's looking pretty good. So now I have that original pencil sketch on the light box, and I'm going to stick down that cured resin piece on top of it. And I'm going to work with a pen. This is a number 3 rapidograph. I like to take the back end of a paintbrush and carve it down to a chisel point. That's a good tool for scraping off mistakes. And I'm going to take a paintbrush and opaque those black areas with ink. So you've seen how easily that ink can be scraped off, whether on purpose or accidentally. So I'm going to spread a thin layer of resin over it for protection. These sponge brushes make good tools for that. I've cut one of them down so I can use it for working the resin to the edges. This pour doesn't have to be too thick, so I've used only 2 teaspoons each of the A and B. And I go to work with the heat gun again and cover it up. Once that thin protection layer is cured, I scan it in. The reason for scanning is that I need to print it out as a guide to be used for cutting the color. Now this pattern detail doesn't have inked outlines, so all I'm doing here is I'm adding those back in from the original pencil sketch. So now I've printed out the guide on cardstock, and now I'm ready to start cutting my color. I'm putting the pieces off to the side on a table as I cut them. Another coat of resin to stick the pieces down, and for this I've used 3 teaspoons each of the A and B. Back to work with the heat gun again. Then I'm going to turn on the light box and I can start sticking down the color. Now with some of these bigger pieces you can get air bubbles trapped underneath, so I'm going to work those out with a toothpick. One thing that happens is these pieces can swim around. They kind of float on the resin surface. Sometimes you have to go back and reposition pieces. So the resin's been curing for about 90 minutes and some of the pieces are still moving around, so I'm going to make a few final tweaks. And the resin has set up enough, so now they should stay put. So I've put the resin piece aside and put down the color cutting guide again. And now I'm going to cut those smaller pieces that make up his pattern. Another layer of resin. This time I've used 3 teaspoons each of the A and B. And the usual spreading, the heat gun, you've seen this already. It's important that you work the resin right up to the edge, so I use that cut-off sponge brush or a toothpick to finesse the edges. And I stick down the rest of the color. Now this time I had let the resin cure a little bit before I stuck down the pieces so they didn't move around as much. So now it's in pretty good shape, except that it has a very irregular surface. So I'm going to do one final pour to smooth it out. This pour needs to be a little thicker, so I'm using 2 tablespoons each of the A and B. And I won't bore you by showing you the heat gun again. It's looking pretty good. All we need is a way to hang it. I'm going to take one of these paper clips. Now some people call them trombones for some reason. I won't judge. And I'm going to take a couple of pairs of pliers and fashion that trombone into a little eyelet shape that I can attach a chain to. I'm going to mix up some 5-minute epoxy. That makes a very strong bond when I stick down those eyelets. I'll hold it in place for a few minutes until it starts to set. Stick the other one down. And now all I have to do is attach either end of a chain to those eyelets. And I'm ready to hang it. So hope you liked the video. If you try this out, let me know how it worked out in the comments.